Welcome everyone to I want to say the first April edition, but we're not quite there yet, of the Aperitif concerts. I'll just get the standard greeting out of the way because y'all know what I'm going to say. We are blessed and honored. We're blessed and honored every week. But I've been waiting for this particular artist for a little while. Another thing I say every week. Um, I'm not going to bother to give you her bio. I'm going to let her introduce herself. I will say she is, without question, one of the most innovative, never to mention one of the busiest uh, poets that is currently, somebody may come along and knock you off your throne, babe, but currently on the Tesoro roster. And I'm going to try my level best to remember how she told me to pronounce her last name. Please welcome to the mic, to the stage, to Zoom, and to YouTube, Shane Menier.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I've been doing spoken word for a long time now. I run a nonprofit as well called Guerrilla Poets, and we do poetry, art, and music workshops based in personal development in areas with little to no access to the arts. So we're also in lockdown facilities, alternative schools, jails, prisons, homeless shelters, and also regular school systems as well. So it's been really beautiful experience. We've been around since 2012. We started as a flash mob, which is really interesting, but now we kind of don't do the flash mob anymore because we don't want to get arrested, right? We don't want to be able to go into the places and yeah, and so you kind of have to have a clean background to do that. But it's been really beautiful. I also coach a lot of poets and creatives as well. So I have a online poetry coaching membership that is going really well that I launched this year. And we also do a National Poetry Month Summit every April. And so that is getting ready to launch off. This is I want to say our 8th year doing it, and it's amazing. And myself and the Poet Laureate of Charlotte, J. Ward, is the hosts for it. And it's all online. And so if you're interested in that, please make sure to reach out to me because doors close like at midnight tonight. So yeah, definitely reach out. But yeah, I quit my job about 6 years ago. I was a graphic designer, and now I get to do what I love for a living, and that's why I'm so busy because you have to have multiple revenue streams, if you're in the arts. So, but it's totally worth it, and I'm just so great to be here and honored also to be a part of this group. So, yeah.
Well, we're lucky and happy to have you, honey. Um, so I will start you off with the question I start everybody off with and interpret it however it is you need to. Why poetry and why now?
So I've been writing ever since I was little. My first poem was actually about werewolves, and I was like, I had to have been like 5 or 6 years old. And it's so interesting. When I got older and I looked back at that poem, I still had it, and I realized, oh wow, grew up in an alcoholic home. People can change at any moment. I was like, okay, little me. Wow, look at the metaphor, right? Of like this thing, this person turning into this like wolf, this monster, right? So I always wrote as a way to process the things that I was experiencing. And I also grew up traveling, so I saw a lot. So not only was it to process trauma, but I was raised around bikers and construction workers. So it's really hard to be like, oh, wow, look at that beautiful sunset and the way it sparkles on the water. And this big biker is like, yeah, okay. like. So poetry really just gave me an outlet to express the beauty and all the amazing things that I experienced growing up. And it just stuck with me. And then when I was in high school, I wrote like my life depended on it because it frankly, it did. My high school years was really rough. My dad died suddenly, and just poetry was a way to heal. And then after that, I realized that not only can it heal me, but it can heal others. And that's why I started Guerrilla Poets, because we had this beautiful experience where this elderly man came up to me after I read a poem on at an open mic. And he said, he threw his arms around me and he was crying. And he said, I didn't even know that poetry was happening tonight. I just came in to get something to eat. And I was going to go home and take my own life. And I want you to know that because I heard that poem, I'm not going to. And he stayed in touch with us for a while after that. And that was the first time I realized, wow, by sharing my story, it could help someone else. And someone that was not even the same age as me, right? Like he was like in his 70s, and here I was like mid 20s, and we had this beautiful connection through, poetry. So I was just on fire for it after that and haven't stopped since. And every month, one of the beautiful things about being busy is every month I see the proof of what it can do. Earlier today, I was telling Stacy that I was I was with an organization called Breathe Inc. and we did a workshop for over 500 students today. It was a lot at a high school, and they would come up and they would want to share their poems with me. And a lot of them were really deep, and they were about how they felt alone and that nobody understood. And just the validation in their eyes to have someone read it and be like, this is really amazing. And I'm so proud of you for being so brave and so vulnerable. Like that can completely change the trajectory of someone's life, just something that simple. And so when I see it happen on their face, it just keeps me going every month. And it's just so beautiful. So when you say like why poetry right why now, I'm like, why forever? Right? Like I think we are always going to need poetry in both the written and the spoken form. Yeah.
Okay. Um, we were talking a little bit about all the myriad projects that you have going on right now. And I think what a lot of folks don't know, what I didn't know for a while, is that you are a visual artist as
Yeah.
well. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I also have been drawing since a very young age. So I was very blessed that my parents poured into both my art and my writing. So I'm very grateful for that. And I feel like a lot of poets are also like I don't want to say multi-talented because I don't believe in talent. I think like you find the thing that you love and you do it so much that it looks like talent, but really it's skill, right? Like I could go in there and pick up my partner's guitar and learn to play it. I just don't want to, right? Like, I just really don't want to. It hurts my fingers and just I'm just not here for it. I'll listen to him play though. Uh, but I mean, it's really cool to have both those outlets because when I don't feel like writing, I can paint. And sometimes I know if you're writers in here, you know that like sometimes you're not ready to talk about it yet. You're just not, right? So I always feel like visual art is the perfect gateway to talking about it. So maybe you don't want to really go into detail or recapture this moment or pull it out of you, but you can at least get started with color and shape and pattern and texture and start the subconscious conversation of what's happening, right? So I think that it really helps that way. And it's great for anxiety too. I always say that the pen grants me freedom and the brush grants me peace. And that's how I kind of feel. Art grounds me and poetry sets me free. So
I love it. I absolutely love it. Um, I don't know why this question popped into my head. I'm just curious for my own self. Do you sing?
I do not sing. I am going to be singing tonight for a few of my poems, though. So y'all laugh at me if you want to. I don't care.
No,
I
no, no,
sing
no,
in the
no.
car and I sing in the shower and I sing around the house. And Daniel, my partner, he thinks I sing well, but you're going to find out tonight that that is not the case. But
No, no.
I
Maya
do love.
Angelou said everybody does everything. It's about levels.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. And I think that singing and projecting your voice is really important too. I found out this like last week that when poets project their voice or singers sing, it stimulates the vagus nerve that is like the nerve that goes from your head all the way through all your organs and all that. And what it does when you stimulate the vagus nerve is it turns off your fight or flight. And that's why it feels like a release. And I was like, that's incredible because the nerve like rests right up against your vocal
Mm.
cords. I was like, no wonder when I get stressed out, I sing. So I was like, that's cool.
When do you take this act overseas, or have you already?
Let's see. I have been overseas, but I haven't performed. I have mainly performed around the US. So I've done a lot of places, San Antonio, Texas, I mean, all over New York. Um, but I have not performed overseas yet in person yet.
Where do you want to go? Let me put it
Oh,
that way.
everywhere,
Every, okay.
everywhere,
Where do you want to
everywhere.
go first? Let's put it that way.
I would love to go back to France. I spent some time there for art, and uh, everybody thought I was from Canada because I am French Indian, and so my high cheekbones, and then just the way my face is, and the way, yeah, I got the hair on my arms as well. Thanks, French, you know. But and my hair and everything. And I got treated like gold. I was getting free stuff left and right, but all the other students who went with me were getting robbed and mugged. And for me, it was just like, welcome home, comrade, you know, and it was beautiful. And I would love to go do poetry there. I would love to go back there and do it.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about women and poetry and politics.
Ooh, okay. Ooh. Well, I will have to say, when it comes to women in poetry, one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for this space is that a lot of women get treated lesser than. And there's also, of course, issues of safety, assault, you know, sexual assault. I personally have not had anyone, knock on wood, I've not had anyone like make advances to me or make disgusting gestures or just energy around me. And I don't know if that's, I've been told I'm intimidating. I don't know if that's the case. I don't, they hear my poetry and then they're like, I ain't messing with her. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, I have been very lucky to have not gotten into that. But what I have witnessed is male poets treat female poets, including myself, as if, oh, we're not going to win in a slam. And then, you know, of course, we beat them. uh, that has happened. Belittling our judgment, belittling our story as well, and our experiences, that has happened. And not including us in on the conversation. That happens a lot at festivals, actually. It happens a lot at large slams as well. You'll see a group of poets together, and when a female tries to approach and talk and join the conversation, they just completely ignore her or push her out. Even the body language, like everybody just turns and kind of blocks them away. Not in all spaces, but I have seen it in many, you know. Um, Politics wise, I mean, that's part of it as well. And it's hard to find a safe space too if it's any, if your poetry is centered around anything that uh if the area that you are in, like a red state or anything like that, it can be really challenging. I've heard this for a lot of poets as well, to find open mics where you actually feel safe enough to express your work. So it feels like you can't promote yourself because you don't feel safe enough to promote yourself, right? And that becomes an issue, and it's really hard for your poetry to be accessible when it's not safe for it to be accessible. So I've experienced that.
So how do we fix that? What do you think?
I mean, definitely by making spaces like this and forming groups. I think when, if one woman goes in and does something, that feels very scary. That feels very much like I'm on my own on this. There's a high danger alert, right? But when a group goes, that there's power in numbers, you know, there's support in that. There's um I think a big part of it too is we've got to start, I feel us as poets, we hold people accountable, but the venues don't. The venues don't. So everyone will know, oh, this person's a predator, but the venue is still allowing them to feature there or come through there, and the cycle just continues because, oh, that feature pulls a big crowd or something. Meanwhile, the girl who was, you know, abused can pull just as big as a crowd, but because she is female, they don't give her that chance. And what's wild about that is I took a online women's entrepreneur class, So it was focused solely on women. And in it, it talked about how they did a study and found out that investors will invest more in men when there's a risk than they will in women, just right out the gate. And like that, shows up in the poetry world when you have, a woman who has an incredible set, already has a following, right? Has all the credit, the credibility that she needs, but they're going to choose this other person who could be potentially a danger rather than her, because she's a woman. So
Yeah, and excuse me, during the course of my career, which is slightly longer than yours, I've run across that I can't tell you how many times. And I was really, really hoping that by now it would have stopped. It would just be a really bad memory. And unfortunately, it just seems to be getting worse. And I don't understand that. I thought that I think everybody thought that by now, civilization would have evolved to the point where we don't have to worry about where we go and how we do our jobs. And instead, it's getting, as you put, more and more dangerous. Uh, I don't see a fix come anytime soon. But what I do have is one of the most incredible voices on the planet to help us figure it out. So without any further ado, sweetheart, the floor is yours. Do your thing.
thank you so much, Stacey, and thank y'all for joining me tonight. The way I do my features is I run right through. So I will let you know when I stop because there'll be a break. But I love to curate them. I love to set them up to where it tells its own story. And I love connecting poems where one feeds into the next, into the next. So I'm just giving that disclaimer. So I was riding with someone and I was getting ready to go feature at the Blumenthal in Charlotte, which is this big, beautiful theater. It's like, that's the place you want to feature at. And I was so excited about it. And I was telling this guy, and he said, well, I don't see what the big deal is. It's just poetry, it's just words. And I had some choice words for him, but I didn't say them. Instead, I told him about how I became a poet. I said, look, man, my dad was drunk outside the Mayflower restaurant the night he knelt down and placed his hand on my shoulder when I was 7. And he pointed up to a crescent moon with a star next to a steeple. And he said, look, remember this. Then he staggered off to the car and he left me in the parking lot. So I stared and stared until my eyes fell backwards into my face, became black holes and sucked the moon out of the sky. Y'all, my dad taught me how to see, how to listen, taught me that poetry is in every instant, taught me to interpret the forgotten languages. When I was 8, he deemed our poem Invictus, wrote it on the back of his toolbox in black, and we would recite it over and over down long roads. Y'all, my dad taught me about long roads, taught me when you are fluent in the tongue of the world, you must also know control, taught me what it means to be a poet. When I was 5, a snake bit him. And I watched this man bend down, grab it by both ends, and bite that snake in half. My dad taught me how to hold the devil in my mouth, how to spit him back out, how to swallow sin and speak deliverance. Taught me this life will wiggle. You got to grab it by both ends. Now that he's dead, I tell the stars themselves, look, remember this. Every time a poem supernovas at the black hole of my pen, because I may be the vessel, but I am still the captain of the ship, and God may move through me, but I move the God in them, and stagger off into the crowd, but they lay hands on me like butterfly pins. This becomes reverse revival. The moment my foot leaves the stage, I am the one now led to slaughter, and you become the savior. So clear a path so my blood could Jordan its way to Jesus, spitting us this stanza to be a staff of Moses when we rockin' and a rolling on the waters of my passion, because I still to this day got all I know is wilderness, stampeding around in the arc of my rib. You call me lion, call me pigeon, call me shepherd, called me a crescent moon, threatening a star at saber point, holding the entire night for ransom. By dawn, you will bear all your nakedness, a strip in each sentence. Tell me that shit ain't powerful. So the next time a poet says, look, better be paying attention. Cherokee woman told us at the Sweat Lodge ceremony that when we were making our way home, to pay attention, to say out loud to the universe, I'm visible. That after doing anything spiritual, sometimes others don't see you because you're not quite in your body. But we were all women. So I was like, women, our spirituality is our bodies. And the way the beginning was bred into our bones, how our womb is life force. She said once, a truck almost wrecked into her on the way home. So she started shouting, I'm visible, I'm visible. So I want every woman right now, all across this earth, to stand up and with all your maiden, mother, and crone mouths, holler out, I'm visible, because we aren't being seen as equally human. Our bodies in constant wreckage against men who think it's a privilege to have a penis. Our bodies in constant body shops to please the riders of our plush thighs and hearts. Y'all, there are more things that need to heal than bruises and blood when rape's involved. There are years upon years of manipulation and control, of silence snuffed out of our defenses and protection. So you stand up and tell them, I'm visible. Ask these lost boys where their mothers are, and if they can touch and talk to them the way they've done you. Ask them if their daughters will still be held under the same fists and force of their abuse. Ask them if there's a vendetta in their story from women, or if there's an absence of one, or if the only touch they ever got was from a prostitute when they paid for, and it left them confused at service versus possession. It's not in the why. It's in the how you expose the devil dicks in the question. Ask them if they've ever been molested when passed out at a party. And if that's the fear behind their homophobia, that one day they may be treated the same way they treat women. Tell them muscle ain't got shit against a woman on a mission. I'm visible. There's no excuse for abuse when you've grown enough to know what your body can do. It will not be accepted and it won't pass by our inspection because we visible. We be woman warrior women, and you can't even be in existence without us. So, coward, realize you are powerless against us. You cannot ignore our presence, and you will be haunted by your actions, because to disrespect us is to disrespect life. We are visible. Indivisible by your lust and your rules. Rich, spoiled boys, you cannot buy us, and you can make all the laws you want, but you cannot soften our stubbornness. Hell hath no fury like a visible woman. So you shout it out loud so these so-called men can tremble at creation. You let your hips be the walls against brutality in this nation. You put your boots on under your gowns, queens and princesses, and you gather up your sisters, and you raise up your Athena, your Cleopatra, your Amazon, your Bellatrix, your brazen voices, and you tell the whole damn world, I'm visible. Sometimes too visible. Too visible. Like the day my TED Talk was released, I was so excited. My talk was called There's No Such Thing as a Bad Kid, based on my work in lockdown facilities. Now, most of the comments on YouTube were supportive, and then there was Tim, who commented, told by the person who looks like she burnt down an orphanage in her childhood. Whew, ouch. Dear Tim, how did you find out? What gave it away? Was it the soot on my fingers, the burnt shoelace? Or was it the children running in all directions to their freedom? You're right. I burned that bitch down. I did it for every child in the foster system who got sexually assaulted behind closed doors and paperwork. work. Children who were told their trauma wasn't valid enough for violent outbursts. Teens, my own students, who cut off ankle bracelet monitors to break out the group home because they weren't safe enough. So I showed up on the front porch, my voice a torch, my tongue a pitchfork, to show them how bright a heart could burn, how love can break bricks down and infiltrate oppressive systems, how the flicker of passion can backdraft a building into belief and hope. What you think I did the talk for? What was I supposed to look like, Tim? Polished, perfect hair and skin, like I wasn't supposed to come out the flames of hell with no split ends. Don't you know that judgments are reserved for those privileged enough to have never seen horror? Don't you know that knights in shining armor are liars who have never seen battle? It's the warriors with dented metal you want fighting for your honor. Tim, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't make it to your childhood in time to burn it down for you. I didn't stop the shadows from staining your eyes with defense mechanisms to protect the little boy that slumbers within them. But honey, now that you know what a hero looks like, maybe you can become one of them. Tim, there's so many orphanages, and I only got so many matches I can strike at once. Maybe you could set down your judgments, pick up a flame and find your purpose. There's too many kids who need us. On average, a child is abused every 10 seconds. Y'all, so far in this poem alone, there have been 12 of them. Tim, maybe you got a few blemishes, a few scars that shamed you into believing you had to hide them, but it's okay to look like you've been through it. How else are little soldiers supposed to find the medics? Tim, I got enough love to gift you a box of matches, to uncurl my fistful of ashes and hold the hand of your inner child. Can't you see that it's the damaged ones like us that make a difference? So honey, please take my hand and let's go find your orphanage. Because there's too much violence. There's so much violence. It's like a song that just keeps playing on repeat. You know the one. It goes, all the other kids with the pumped up kicks better run, outrun my gun. Nicholas is 14. His daddy died when he was young. Was a real man's man, you know, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Showed he is privileged. If there's something you want in this world, you got to take it. Nicholas can't pass his classes, signs up for football, but the jocks laugh at him, starts to notice females, wants to touch them, but none of the girls will let Nicholas near them. He's starting to fall into position of society's toxic white male condition, that if there's something you want in this world, you got to take it. Comes home with a black eye, remembers daddy said power is a weapon every man must have. If they hurt you, you hurt them back. Signs up for the reserves, but y'all, they still laugh. He's seen the counselor 4 times in 2 weeks, but given pills that make it hard to sleep. And he's already tired of being bullied. Daddy said a man is deserving of respect. He's starting to think if they ain't giving it, he's gonna take it. Classmates give him the nickname school shooter. A joke was made in this culture. He's contemplating embracing it as his future. Society says a man is muscles, mass, and guns. There is no such thing as manly depression. His therapist says give the pills time to work. He tells the faculty if they don't do something, he's going to do something first. 4 more warning posts go up. His Facebook looks like a death threat no one wants to face yet. Profile of the persona they gave him, the pill still ain't working, so he's been planning for months. Knows where the AR-15 is locked up, knows every fire drill, makes a last effort, confesses to his crush. Sarah tells him to fuck off. It's Valentine's Day. Florida, calls Uber, got his headphones on. He's been listening to the same song all night long, pulls up to campus, pulls out the AR-15, starts to sing. All the other kids, kicks in classroom 2B. Sarah screams, puts a bullet between her breasts. Pow, you love me now? With the pumped up kicks. Targets a football player in fetal position, shouts, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Pow, better run. Cites the counselor, shoves the barrel in his mouth. Swallow this and see how it goes down. You prick, you never really gave a shit. Pow, outrun my gun. opens full fire, hypnotized by the sound of the rounds till he runs out, panics at how loud the sudden silence is, flees into a sea of teens, cornered an hour later by the police, still ringing the red in his hand, doesn't even notice the sirens, shot still popping off in his synapses, doesn't understand what happened. All he ever did is what his daddy, white America, taught him, how to be a man. Isn't this the monster that the white male standard birthed, that the NRA upholds, that mental illness triggers when it's ignored? Is it guilt of their creation? The reason he is so privileged to be cuffed and not shot on sight when the cops arrive. All the other kids, pumped up kids, better run, outrun my gun. Pow. Promise me, son, not to do the things I've done. Walk away from trouble if you can. Now, it won't mean you're weak if you turn the other cheek. I hope you're old enough to understand. Son, you don't have to fight to be a man. My dad was one tough son of a bitch. Came up from nothing deep in the mountains of Tennessee. A real cowboy. That's why he named me Shane. And I was a daddy's girl all the way. Y'all, when I was 8, I saw him stab an undercover cop in the eye with a hunting knife during a poker fight. It was wild. I got to see part of the trial. When I told this to my half-sister, she said, "Oh my God, no child should have had to have gone through that." You see, the memories I thought were badass explained years of my own violence. When I was in high school, I wanted nothing more than to feel the clink of teeth across my knuckles. Violence was a language, became more than just a habit. My dad had this habit of walking into a bar and yelling, "Which one in here is the biggest, toughest son of a bitch?" One night, a man said he'd go get his gun and we'd just see who the biggest is. The way I heard it, my daddy nodded his head calmly, walked to his truck, got his gun, and shot the man dead. I didn't get to see that trial, but I remember daddy was gone for a while and mama being afraid. You see, in our family, fear shows itself as rage. Plot twist, he got off on self-defense, and they say there's another body buried in the mountains. Years later, I found out my biological mother stabbed her ex-husband. And even though he survived, I'll tell you a secret. I'm scared I'll end up like my parents, untangling trauma from tradition, generational curses from lineage. I really need God to respond to my text messages because I got one hell of a question that might carry hell with it. If a person is capable of murder, do you think it's hereditary? They've done studies on the murder gene, how much of my DNA can be linked to a DOA, RIP. I got trust issues with my cell tissues. There's still a part of me that feels weaker without anger, thinks that if someone is upset at me, they're coming. Because in my family, that's exactly what it meant. So what's the difference between paranoia and threat? Is it a lie to cry wolf if you really believe the wolf is coming? Most days, I feel like the wolf thrown to the humans, a world that operates the opposite from how I was raised, look myself in the face and not see a cascade of caskets, my pupils, 2 barrels filled with graves, handed down the haunting of the men my daddy killed. Plot twist, the kid born into the gang gets to go free because daddies don't survive long in this environment. I just worry about the blood backfiring in my bloodstream, the sins of the father becoming the prayer I sing for peace. So promise me, son, not to do the things I've done. Walk away from trouble if you can. Now, it won't mean you're weak if you turn the other cheek. I hope you're old enough to understand. Son, you don't have to fight to be a man. So it's a good thing that I was born a woman. Until men try to muscle me into submission. Like, he was cute until he called me a bitch. And then I was like, bitch? Oh, bitch. Honey, after the club, and I took you home, told you I was done to put your pants back on and go back to your yard, you looked at me as if you'd never seen a dog before. To the boys I've broken, yes, I enjoyed the snap, crackle, pop of your pleas between sheets. Your inferiority was my breakfast for an unbalanced morning. You didn't know that when you starve a bitch in heat, she will bite the hand that feeds. She will feast on men who claim to be wolves. For years, I swallowed spoonfuls of your spite. Every time the spittle of my shine leaked from my lips, the only language you ever listened to was these hips. Couldn't stand to see me on stage like a big dog, but you forget. Shakira also sang about a she-wolf, how these thighs rise with the moon, can bury you under opal ovaries in bloom. Honey, women can be hunters too. You can also be seen as a piece of meat, food. I have told you not to come in here unless you're ready to ride bareback on barbed wire, because my love be a junkyard and this bitch be a Rottweiler. I have collected every crashed Casanova collision from boys who tried to crush me in their crushes, to leash me to a house only big enough to lay down in, try to Stepford wife me into a picket fence. I have mangled every muzzle you have clasped on me in fear that I would bark back up your bones. Didn't want to admit, you offered your own body up. The only thing you ever caught, dog catcher, was feelings. Didn't you see my hunger? Recognize it as your own? You know, you could see the ribs of a bitch who's starving. Did you want to take your rib back? Are you mad that I took your spine instead? But wasn't the taste of the kill delicious? And wasn't I the beast you always wanted? You knew what this was. By the growl of my groin, boy, you were dinner. Just 3 courses steaming against a bedpost. Your ego, my dessert. Oh, honey, didn't you see my teeth on the dance floor? Oh, sometimes, y'all, sometimes you have to give them some advice. And sometimes poetry is the perfect advice. So on that note, I would love to end this with my letter to advice to poets. So here we go. I'm actually going to pull it up on my phone because I don't want like bright screen glaring at me. But I hope that y'all have enjoyed this. I have thoroughly enjoyed being here. Yeah. Okay. Advice to a poet. Hold on to the flood. Moments when you cease to exist, becoming the poem, when there is nothing between you and God but words, and the words are a tether tying every atom together, reconnecting to remember what it is to be alive, to be human. This is the purpose. Remember it. On days where your attention strays, when half of your peers puts you on a pedestal of praise, awestruck at how far you've come, all you seem to accomplish, and the other half are wondering why you aren't going further, faster, doing more projects. When you feel caught between glamour and amateur, bring yourself back to becoming the vessel. Set goals that align with your values. Learn to see social media as an invitation for your audience to believe that even the shittiest of your books, with the mispunctuation or the album with the background noise, is worth their support to continue your craft. When they doubt if it's worth it, you remind them the power poetry has. Show them the inside of every rewritten, rebuilt cell, shed at the prick of a pen tip. Show them how sweet black ink can bleed. Confuse them with pleasure and pain, want and need. Remind them they long for something they can't name, and then name it. You won't be able to save everyone, and it will take years of trying to realize that you actually can't save anyone. What you can do is create a space for people to save themselves. When you figure that out, embody it. Be the space that walks, the grace between a semicolon. Become so soft and open-armed that even the most mice of men can approach you to learn how to become lions. On days when the world mistakes your love for naiveness, show them their nakedness, every insecurity that bloomed around every bruise at abused friendships. Show them how Jonah whale big your heart is, how much forgiveness your heart can house around them. If you stay true to your passion and purpose, holding love in front of you to enter every space you grace, then you will never question if you are good enough to be a poet. The days you feel you don't have to prove something will be more than the ones you feel you do. But on the days you do, make them question the origin of lightning by the way your tongue sizzles their skin and leaves the air spinning, splinting ions, the echoes of thunder pulsing in their ears, rising a sea of hot blood to swell at the surface of their flesh till all they can taste is the iron in the ink, rattle their teeth with syllables slung from your throat, hard enough to shatter the wooden doors of their homes, where not even a car ride in a city between them and you can fade out the connection. Thank you, y'all.
Oh my days. Y'all open up your mics, throw this woman all the roses you have at your disposal. That was past
Woo!
Woo!
unbelievable.
Yes.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
great.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks y'all so much.
See, I've been sitting here worried for a little bit that I haven't been going to church as often as I needed to, and here we are.
So yeah, I realized like we still have time. So I mean, I
We
could do.
do.
Do y'all want to
I
hear
was
more?
about to say, you really didn't think we were going to let you off stage after that, did you? I mean,
Okay,
come on,
I
babe.
will do more. Speaking of church,
Mhm.
so I have a piece that originally was supposed to be a flash mob, and I was originally supposed to flash mob Elevation Church, which, if you don't know Elevation Church, it's a huge mega church, and they there's some shady business going on in Elevation. Now, not all of it. There are people that go out in the community and they do great things. But the founder, the big honcho in charge, says that he donates all this money, every year. But that money goes into his wife's nonprofit, which eventually just cycles back into his bank account. So, yeah. So I was originally going to do this poem in front of Elevation Church here in Charlotte. And then I realized, oh, they have bodyguards. Oh, I'm not trying to get assassinated by the church. Okay, so, but I will do this poem here for y'all. All right. The Pentecostal prophets say my profits ain't big enough to pickpocket. And the apostolic apostles say I got to give 15% of my income, making me feed myself or my faith. So I guess I'm damned either way. I didn't know that fasting would be a requirement of the church. I didn't know that Lent would be a weekly offering. I guess I got tired of seeing old Mary go through those church doors every Sunday, come out down at the welfare office on Monday, trying to get canned peas to cook in a crock pot of hope. I think your revolving doors of mercy are broke. I saw her last week on the corner of Grace Boulevard and Belief Avenue, window shopping for a reason to give thanks. And the pastor pulled up in his BMW, his smile matching the new paint, waved before driving off to his 7-bedroom mansion with this golden gate. And Mary, She just smiled like a stretched pew with her hands folded into a collapsed prayer. Watch her tithes drive off with her investment of security. I guess I got tired of paying for your property, so no, ain't going to church on Sunday. Ain't rich enough to go to your business meeting. You're treating your community like a stock market, but you ain't passing out no dividends when you close your doors in below freezing temperatures to 2001 at your city's homelessness, while you raking it in for your house in the hills. And it is written, be humble before the Lord. Honey, ain't nothing humble about your home when it's got a heated swimming pool and a 5-car garage, when that shepherd's riding around his golf cart, trading all that wool for coin while God's children are left out in the cold. Nah, ain't going to church on Sunday, but I will be praying for all our souls. See, I built my worship in the woods, and I don't have to offer any ante but a confession and a line of communication. I don't need to give reason for thanks, and I damn sure ain't got to give anything to be forgiven, except before to ask. So that's that piece. So
I
yeah,
think that's just about going to take us out. As much as I would love to hear you go all night long, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you now. Again, open up your mics, give this woman some roses. I have been privy to a lot of absolutely unbelievable sets, and this one is just incandescent among them. The piece that you do about your dad always makes me cry. I can see it. It's such a visual piece. So for those of you who are kind enough to come, for those of you who will see this on YouTube, if you are interested in donating to our flow, hit us at poetswind@hotmail.com, on PayPal. 90% goes to the artist, 10% goes to Soto to keep the lights on. Please keep an eye out for this woman. Friend her, buy her materials, send her money.
And join
You know.
the National Poetry Month Summit because it's amazing. There's amazing online events. There's creative talks every Monday, and they're recorded as well. And it's a ton of resources, just a ton, if you want to learn about the business side of poetry and also craft work as well. So
Okay. Fantastic. Shane, Munir, thank you again so much, darling. I do truly appreciate it. For everybody out there who has been here before, y'all know how I am. I am through messing with people's time zones. So wherever you are, have a fantastic whatever season of the day it happens to be. And we will see you at the next aperitif. Have a fantastic weekend.